this is Summer Lynn from Chicago, Illinois. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Relay for all the love and support they've given my team and I. And make sure you stay tuned for all the latest boxing news.
Welcome to the motherfucking Relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, that's what you mean by the blank check.
No, because the terms state that the agreement is good because the zone will air the programming. The zone will do it. The agreement is not for somebody else. It's just a blank check where you say, well, I'm going to go out and get the services of XYZ. It's specifically to the zone, Matchroom, and DHP. It's a specific agreement. It's not general like, oh, we're going to find somebody and it's a certain amount of time. It's specifically meant for the zone, Matchroom, and DHP.
That's not all that Bill Haney, the father of Devin Haney, had to say about it. Oh, there's more. There's a lot more. Devin Haney's father, Bill, goes off on Gary Russell Jr. for rejecting offer. He was quoted as saying, lying ass Mr. Gary Russell. You've got the audacity to question or not is DAZN and Matchroom behind the fight. You got the audacity to say a term sheet is a contract. Those are the terms of the fight, sir. We tapped you on the shoulder. DAZN and Matchroom didn't. You know we came looking for you, Mr. Russell. And I told you before we got down, I said, hey, if Al Heyman is interested in putting up the money for you and getting you a world title, you said, Al's not interested. He said, if they'll put up the money, then you with it. You said you didn't want mine. You said you didn't want DHP money, DHP being Devin Haney Promotions. Yeah, you didn't want that. We told we got 1.5 mil for you personally. You said you didn't like that.
Why not?
You didn't want to deal with us with the terms of the 1.5 million. So guess what? We found somebody that would agree to your terms. Your terms. Yeah, excuse me for getting off, because I keep waiting for a call from Gary and them to say he just realized what the fuck he just said and he was out of pocket. Everyone needs an approval from a network. As promoters, how would I present it to the network if he's not even agreeing to the shit? We're not getting another opponent. Gary Russell's the opponent. We're not moving on, because if DAZN don't approve it, then Showtime will approve it. You are the opponent and you will not get out of this. And if it don't look right, you write the shit and send it back to us. Write the shit down and send it over, or stop capping, low-ass fraud. I want to say that a lot of these public statements being issued out from Bill Haney to Gary Russell and from Gary Russell to Bill Haney all sounds good. All sounds great on both sides. Both sides are making some very valid points in full view of the public eye, and it's for this reason that I'm very skeptical of what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, because whatever I'm seeing and whatever I'm hearing is being put out there for me, several others, the boxing community at large, to see it. I wonder that all of this isn't a joint effort to gain some publicity for both of these guys for a fight that in all likelihood will never materialize. I mean, it could be that way, though if I entertain what's being said and just take it all at face value.
Let's say these guys are for real.
Or at least some of these guys are for real. Some of what these guys are saying. I can totally believe Bill Haney when he says that Gary Russell told him Al Heyman is not interested in this fight, not interested enough to be the financier of it, as Al Heyman has never really seemed all that interested in the career of Gary Russell Jr. I mean, how interested could he have been in the career advancement of Gary Russell Jr. by basically allowing him to fight only once a year for the last 5 years, keeping Leo Santa Cruz away from him so he could feed him to Gervonta Davis? I've been saying it for a long time. If Al Heyman's interested in anybody's career, it's the career of Gervonta Davis, because he protected Leo Santa Cruz from Gary Russell long enough to feed him to Gervonta Davis. Al Heyman is not and has not been interested in the career of Gary Russell Jr. That much is obvious, and that much is believable. But if I maintain a healthy amount of skepticism as I watch this set of negotiations unfold in full view of the public eye, the fact that it's unfolding in full view of the public eye is what sparks my suspicions. All of this isn't necessary to negotiate a goddamn fight. Not unless one or some of the aforementioned parties don't want the goddamn fight. It could be that, or it could be that the both of yous are just playing the boxing fans, playing the boxing community at large into thinking that you guys are trying to negotiate a fight when really all you're doing is just keeping them talking about you in reference to a set of negotiations for a fight that you know isn't going to happen. Look, there's easier ways for Gary Russell to get that same kind of payday, staying put, staying right there in his own goddamn weight class. What are we actually talking about here? $1.5 million? I think Eddie Hearn would stake that much money to see Gary Russell Jr. fight the winner of Kansu versus Josh Warrington. And that wouldn't require Gary to make constant Instagram videos, fight hype videos, talk a bunch of shit, point his finger at the camera. I mean, that's not really an exorbitant amount of money. You could probably get that kind of a payday staying right there in the featherweight division and unifying with one of the other champions. You're going to jump up 2 weight classes for a price of $1.5 million when you could probably get that same amount of money staying put, staying right there where you are. I mean, if you're willing to cross over to the Matchroom DAZN side of things, then why aren't you willing to cross over to the Matchroom DAZN side of things for the winner of Warrington versus Zhu? You certainly stand a better chance of winning that fight than jumping up 2 weight classes to fight Devin Haney.
That's what makes all of this hard to believe.
I don't actually know that this fight is or isn't going to come off, but I'll tell you that the constant back and forth between both teams, the bickering over social media, in full view of the public eye, negotiating a fight that's actually becoming normalcy, leaked sparring footage and gaining notoriety as a result of it, is also becoming normalcy in today's era of boxing. And all that reminds me is that, you know what? This ain't your father's era of boxing. Things are a bit backwards these days. And this is just the latest chapter in the Haney versus Russell Jr. saga. In junior middleweight and middleweight news, there was some bluster over the announced price point for the Charlo doubleheader set to go down on Showtime pay-per-view. The announced price point was something to the tune of $74.95. That was expected. And the question is it value for money? Do you think it's worth it? From where I'm sitting, this really is one of the better pay-per-views that the PBC will be putting on this upcoming fall. I've talked about this endlessly, how when it comes to Spence versus Garcia, the biggest selling point in that pay-per-view is the car accident. It's not actually a case of the best versus the best in the sense that we don't know if Errol Spence is really at his best. And that's the selling point. That's the intrigue. Because if he's not at his best, then maybe Danny Garcia's got a shot. From where I'm sitting, that looks more like a glorified tune-up fight than a pay-per-view event. You think about Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz, and I'd much rather see those guys fighting the best guys at their own weight instead of looking to fight each other to avoid the rest of their respective weight classes, because that very much appears to be the look of things. It's either Gervonta Davis is simply too big and too strong for little old Leo Santa Cruz, or Gervonta Davis will be too gaunt, too compromised from trying to make the weight that perhaps Leo Santa Cruz has a chance. I mean, once again, it's not really a case of the best versus the best, whereas when it comes to this Charlo doubleheader, you can say that Jason Rosario versus Jermell Charlo is a bona fide case of the best versus the best. One is a unified champion, champion also. And they're going to be locking horns. The number 1 and number 2 guys, according to Ring Magazine's rank standings. One might think to themselves that, well, yeah, it's a great fight, but neither one of these 2 guys have the kind of following that warrants this being a pay-per-view. But that's not all, folks. It's not just that fight. It's not just that you're getting for your money. You're also getting Jermall Charlo, middleweight division, against the battle-tested Sergey Derevyanchenko in what is a genuinely intriguing fight, because Jermall really hasn't had a solid test in the middleweight division. Guy like Sergey Derevyanchenko, who's been in there with Daniel Jacobs, who's been in there with Gennady Golovkin, and to some, beat him. I won't lie to you that this isn't the best fight the division has to offer. A unification match for Jermall really would make a lot more sense than this, given that he's running some sizable risks against Sergey. And if you're going to run those kinds of risks, it might as well be against a champion like Demetrius Andrade, who is in need of a dance partner, better still, Jamal's not interested, and we've covered that endlessly. The point is,
Still a good fight.
this isn't a bad fight. It's intriguing enough that it's not a foregone conclusion that either Sergey wins or Jamal wins. I understand that individually, Charlo versus Derevyanchenko or Charlo versus Rosario are not pay-per-view worthy in it of themselves, but together as a packaged deal, it's value for money. Those are two genuinely intriguing matchups that are worth the $74.95 it's going to cost to order it on pay-per-view. So I will say, this is one card that I'm going to be spending my hard-earned cash on. I don't know about that Davis versus Santa Cruz, and I don't know about that Spence versus Garcia, but Charlo versus Rosario and Charlo versus Derevyanchenko as a packaged deal,
Good fights.
it's worth the price tag. Now, as far as how good or bad this might do in today's landscape, today's pay-per-view market, it really is anybody's guess. I mean, this is a genuinely intriguing card to a hardcore boxing fan, but that's just it. There really aren't that many hardcore boxing fans to go around, and generally speaking, it's when the casual audience gets involved that you start to move the needle. Neither one of the Charlo brothers or their opponents are all that well known amongst the casual audience. Thus, the buy rate for this thing could be good, could be bad. But if you want my honest opinion, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, this card is worth the price tag, and this is one card that's definitely getting my money. And finally, I'm sure most of you have heard by now, but earlier today, Canelo's lawsuit versus Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN has been dismissed in its current form. He has a deadline to amend it. Friday's ruling suggested that Alvarez and his legal team, the Maloney firm, have more work to do, because the complaint alleges the citizenship of the LLC defendants as if they were corporations rather than as limited liability companies. The complaint has not properly alleged the citizenship of those parties, noted the Honorable Percy Anderson, District Judge for the U.S. District Court, in the official ruling, a copy of which has been obtained by BoxingScene.com. Absent unusual circumstances, a party seeking to invoke diversity jurisdiction should be able to allege affirmatively the actual citizenship of the relevant parties. As a result, plaintiffs' allegations are not sufficient to invoke this court's diversity jurisdiction. Now, we know what Canelo Alvarez is suing for. He's suing for the remaining $280 million of his contract, punitive damages, and court costs. As revealed in the filed lawsuit, the actual contract exists between DAZN and Golden Boy, the latter whom in turn pays Alvarez. By his own admission, Alvarez has never seen the contract between the two, despite multiple requests for a copy, which he alleges have been refused by both sides. Accordingly, the court dismisses plaintiff's complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. Judge Anderson stated in the dismissal, a district court may and should grant leave to amend when it appears that subject matter jurisdiction may exist, even though the complaint inadequately alleges jurisdiction.
He's essentially giving Canelo Alvarez a chance to get his ducks in order.
Therefore, the court grants plaintiffs leave to amend the complaint to establish federal subject matter jurisdiction. Alvarez now has until September 28th to file a first amended complaint. Failure to do so or adequately allege the district court's jurisdiction will potentially result in an outright dismissal. Another portion of the article reads, efforts to land on an approved opponent for Alvarez's next fight have been compromised by the insistence of the global superstar having to take a massive pay cut, which he was willing to do within reason, all whilst claiming the final say on who he faces. Such language is not found in the existing contract, as discovered by Alvarez's attorney. The contract states Alvarez's opponents would be mutually selected by Alvarez and Golden Boy Promotions, subject to Alvarez's final approval, not to be unreasonably withheld. Now, I'm going to do my best to try to help you guys and girls understand what's going on here, because I'm fully aware not all of us are fluent in legalese. But the first problem here is that Canelo Alvarez did not adequately define
Citizenship.
the defendants being Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN. And until he defines them properly, until he amends this complaint, this thing don't get off the ground. He's got until September 28th to do it.
That's his first problem.
The second problem Canelo Alvarez's complaint faces is that he hasn't actually seen the contract between Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN. His understanding of how things are supposed to be is all based on the deal he struck with Golden Boy Promotions. But he's in the dark as far as Golden Boy Promotions' deal with DAZN. So how could you be suing for a breach of contract when you haven't seen all the contracts? You don't know what's in them.
You don't know what they agreed to on your behalf.
You don't know what they walked you into, and rest assured, they had the power to walk you into it because you empowered them to do so when you struck a deal with them being Golden Boy Promotions. I think the most pertinent question here is, what if the deal that Golden Boy Promotions struck with DAZN is inconsistent with the deal that Golden Boy Promotions has with Canelo Alvarez? What happens then? In that situation, based on the look of it, it looks like DAZN is scot-free and all the liability might fall on Golden Boy Promotions. Maybe they're the ones who are in breach of contract. The existing contract they had with Canelo Alvarez, which is inconsistent with the deal they struck with DAZN. Canelo thinks he's got the final say on who he fights. He believed that decision would be agreed upon by himself and Golden Boy Promotions, but ultimately he would have the final say. And whatever deal Golden Boy Promotions struck with DAZN must say something else, because DAZN is the one approving the opponents here. They're the ones who appear to have the final say, which goes against Canelo's understanding of how things are supposed to work. The bottom line here is that Canelo Alvarez's lawsuit may not get off the ground because he doesn't know all the particulars. He doesn't know what Golden Boy Promotions agreed to on his behalf. Listen, Golden Boy Promotions has kept Canelo so in the dark about things that he doesn't even know how to present the complaint properly. If you want my opinion and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, this is an indicator that Canelo Alvarez needs to call this off, because the reality of things, an amicable solution for all the aforementioned parties, Canelo, Golden Boy, and DAZN, is the best solution, the best scenario for everyone. Oh, Canelo not having full disclosure as to what it is Golden Boy Promotions agreed to might be ruffling his feathers now, but how much more ruffled are his feathers going to be after months of litigation and months of inactivity? Because that's what could happen. This could end up costing Canelo Alvarez more than he realizes. And as far as Golden Boy Promotions and their backdoor shenanigans, backdooring their star fighter, their golden goose, those backdoor shenanigans could prove more expensive than if they would have gave Canelo Alvarez full disclosure.
Which he's going to want moving forward.
And let's just hope that DAZN still cares enough not to rescind this relationship altogether, that they're still willing to come to the negotiation table for the best interests of all the aforementioned parties.
Let's hope.
Because in spite of the popular narratives you've seen in the YouTube boxing community, DAZN is covered. I've been telling you guys for days. Canelo Alvarez's lawsuit has more to do with Golden Boy than it does DAZN. You want my diagnosis? What's best for everyone is to settle out of court, and let's get back to boxing.